I don't need a chief of staff to go and do research on it. I don't even really need to talk to experts on it. In the early days, I go and do a bunch of research on AI, then I call the experts, right? And that is a crazy shift. Like, it's a crazy shift for me as a CEO. And I'm not even at the center of the bullseye here. You know, the
Right.
center of the bullseye is a 6-year-old. The center of the bullseye is a designer or an engineer.
What would happen if we just told the truth?
Welcome to TruthWorks, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of leadership and work.
And what needs to change? I'm Jessica Neal.
And I'm Patty McCord.
Our journey together started in HR, but trust us, it's evolved into something wild, honest, and well, a bit rebellious.
So throw out the handbook. We're here to redefine rules to work for us, not against us.
Let's dive into another episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of TruthWorks. I'm Jessica Neal, and I'm here with my interim / permanent, co-host, Peter Clarke. Hi,
Just
Pete. How are you?
continual audition. I'm well. How are you? Thank you.
I know.
Good to be here.
Maybe we should do like American Idol. We should send it out to the listeners and everybody can vote.
I like that. No, actually, I don't like that. I'm not a fan. Unless I can control it.
Yeah, right. Well, you can just get a lot of bots and try,
I can do that.
Yeah,
That's a good
you
use
can
of Claude. All right.
Yeah. Okay, but more importantly, besides lovely Peter, thank you for joining again. We love having you. More importantly, we have a very special guest today, and I'm excited to personally learn from him. We just started talking before we were recording, and I can just already tell that it's going to be an amazing conversation. But I have Gagan Biyani with us today, and I don't know how to describe you exactly. I think a lot of people describe you as a serial entrepreneur, but many of the companies that he has started, I'm sure you have used or have been in your life. He was the founder of Udemy, and he was the founder of Sprig, and now he is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Maven. You are a constant learner. I think that's how you've described yourself that I've seen in my research. And we're excited to learn from you. So welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. And I'm super honored to be here. I've admired both of your careers and really appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. And we admire you. So
Thank you.
that's, let's just start there. So, well, I always like to go back in time with my guests because I think it's very interesting to kind of connect the dots of, how you grew up and how you experienced things. I think that sets your life off on these directions, and not many folks go the direction that you went. And so take us back to like when there was a moment in your life growing up where you kind of knew that you were different or that you were going to be this entrepreneur. Like what was it that kind of set you off on this course?
Yeah, I was 13 when I was first approached to start a business by a friend of mine. He reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to teach speech and debate to some kids over the summer and make a few extra bucks?" And my family had some financial challenges over multiple tech recessions. And so it was very much on my mind that money was on my mind. So I was like, sure, I'll do it. We had never competed in speech and debate before. So all we had was the fact that I had gone to a 2-week summer camp at Stanford.
Okay.
And so essentially we just took the 2-week summer camp at Stanford and retaught it to like 4 kids. I think it was 4 kids who were 1 year younger than us.
Perfect.
In our living rooms. Our parents were upstairs. Over the next 4 or 5 years, that became like a pretty sizable business. We had 150 students my final year. I always forget the revenue, but it was like $300 a person. So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's like 50 grand or something like that, 100 grand. There were like tiers. You could pay more. So that was a pretty amazing experience. And I was pretty good at speech and debate. I was top 100 in the country, but my colleagues at my high school were number 2 and number 9. So in my mind, I was not very good at speech and debate because I wasn't anywhere close to them.
Yeah.
And I instead found myself much better at entrepreneurship and running this this org, which they all worked at and all my friends worked at. We had like 10 part-time employees for that 2-week period in the summer when we ran it. And I worked with the administrations of various schools to rent their space. And I was, I created the marketing campaign and built the sort of the curriculum. And so I learned at that time that maybe I had a different future than being a lawyer, and all of a sudden realized that maybe business was for me.
That is so cool. But what a lot of pressure that you had as a 13-year-old to be like, I got to start a business to help out with the finances. But what were your parents telling you at this time? What were they saying?
Well, at almost exactly this time period, of course, at the time, I did not know that I had to help my parents with my finances. Just to be clear. That was not a...
But money was on your mind.
Money was on my mind, but it was not, I did not know that I was going to solve that problem. I did not set out to solve that problem. But yeah, my parents divorced in that exact period of my life.
Yeah.
So my dad left the house and my mother was left sort of with an associate's degree and not a super stable income. But she was very, very smart and she was really financially savvy. So she was able to, through the stock market, essentially, basically finance our lives. But it meant that we were, and we also, just hunkered down a lot. So it was during that time that I realized that money was like something that you had to care about, probably earlier than I needed to.
Yeah.
But the flip side is, you mentioned stress. I was a terrible boss and I was for a long time.
Well, you were 13, so.
Exactly. Yeah, because I was so stressed. And if something went wrong, I'd really get upset. And I particularly, and to this day, I have trouble with this. I particularly got upset when something went wrong and the person didn't own up to it. That is my Achilles heel. Because I don't know how to argue with someone or deal with someone who is not, and the one thing that I've learned since then is okay, give them a couple days, that's the change. It's not, I will not tolerate someone who will not own up to their mistakes, but sometimes it's hard for people in the moment to own up to it. And so the big change from when I was because most people still liked working with me because they knew this. They knew that if they just admitted they were wrong, there would be no problems.
Right.
But if you make that one mistake, I am flipping my shit at you when I'm, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And now I'm much better at saying, okay, look, you're not accepting this today, but I'm going to come back to you in a couple of days.
Right. I think we have the same Achilles heel. I just can't. That and lying, and that's almost like lying.
Absolutely. Yeah. And luckily I've had very, very, very few moments where anyone's ever lied to me. I think that's I think I give off the fear of God in that moment. And I just don't think people do it with me very often.
Yeah. It's hard to do it with a you.
Yeah. You know this because you probably have typed me already and everything. And so, by the way, the reason I knew that would resonate with you is because my perception of the Netflix culture would be somewhat similar to sort of something that resonated with me. And that's why I even intuitively knew I could sort of say that openly with you.
Yes, it's true. I mean, we talked a lot about not hiring a brilliant jerk, but that kind of goes to being a brilliant jerk,
Yeah.
So
for sure.
All right. So you're running your business.
Your Glassdoor reviews
you're
are in
flipping out on people.
Yeah.
And then
just to be clear, just to defend myself, throughout my career, I just give myself a really hard time for the one or two things that I do poorly. The reality is I'm very close friends with everybody who worked at that organization.
Well, yeah. Do you guys still hang out?
Yeah. I'm going this weekend to go hang out with two of them. And, I'll go to New York in a week and I'll hang out with one of them. My entire friend circle to this day is from high school, both high school, my public high school I went to and high school speech and debate. So the high school speech and debate folks are from different schools all over, mostly California, but also the country. So, I would say that
what do they do?
It's a very impressive group. They're mostly lawyers. About a third of them, I guess, became lawyers in profession. About more than half of them got law degrees and then do something similar. one's like one of the top marijuana consultants in the country. Another has been working, works at a top tier law firm. Multiple work at top tier law firms. One's a litigator. They often, cycle in and out of public service. So another one of those folks has worked for multiple administrations, including the Obama administration. So I was very lucky to be in speech and debate as a kid, to have a parent that, despite our financial situation, still just sort of like let me loose and allowed me to finance that, because basically this camp financed our. By the way, the camp was technically a nonprofit. So actually all of these kids, like they all, we paid for our own travel. So it wasn't just me who made money off of this. The whole school basically received the capital. I did get paid for it my senior year when I graduated, but until then, it was really just essentially a fundraiser.
That's so great. I love that story. I love it. Okay. So then all your friends become successful too. You have this great group of friends. Lucky you. I grew up in Kentucky and that was not the case.
I know.
But anywho, then you go where? College?
I went to college. It was the default option. I had no idea at that time that I could just go straight into entrepreneurship. There was nobody in my life who said, Gagan, like, you're good at this and like you should consider it as a career. Nobody. And I grew up in Fremont, California, right? Like at that time, keep in mind, Fremont was essentially Silicon Valley, right? And, today Silicon Valley's moved up to San Francisco a little bit, but, and really the peninsula. But at that time, a lot of my uncles and aunties were working in tech, but I don't think anyone really even considered it. Like they all had, just like line manager jobs at bigger companies. So I had no idea you could do this. I didn't know startups existed. Of course I had heard of Google, but that was about it, So I went to college. I hated college. I loved the social aspect of college. I loved being with, I had a great group of friends. I joined a fraternity, like spent a lot of time socializing. But when it came to actual work and school, I prioritized work over school. And so I had many jobs throughout college. I graduated in 3 years, basically tried to get out as fast as possible. I had a plan for 2.5 years. But the administration essentially prevented me from doing this, which I was pretty pissed about.
Yeah.
And I graduated and I'd spent a year at Accenture as a strategy consultant, again, just following the path that I thought was laid out in front of me. And then the 2008 financial crisis hit, and it really hit my mother and my family. And I started to fear for my job. And so then I discovered TechCrunch. And a friend of mine, one of the friends from Speech and Debate, said, "Hey, have you heard of TechCrunch?" And I said, "No, what is this?" That like one comment, like literally, I'll never forget that comment. That one comment changed the course of my life.
Yeah. And maybe explain, because we all know what TechCrunch is, but maybe explain to our listeners what it is.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, or was at the time, because it's not the same as, yeah.
What it was at the time was truly imagine a world where there's only one media outlet in tech. And TechCrunch was the one media outlet that was more important than any other media outlet in tech and startups. And it was basically started out of this guy, Michael Arrington's living room. And he, just blogged. And it was a blog at first, but it became really, really well known and big just at the right time, just as, the most recent tech boom. Now, people don't think of this history this way, but the truth is that until about 2008, 2009, tech was essentially dead. Startups were very rare. There were a few successful ones that started between 2001, the dot-com bubble, and 2008, but very, very few. And 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010 was really the start of the modern era of technology. And then, of course, it expanded way beyond what we all expected. So TechCrunch was started at that time. Udemy was on the tail end of that time period. We started in 2009. So that is what TechCrunch was. It was the center of information.
It was,
and so if you were on TechCrunch, you all of a sudden knew everything that was happening in the tech.
No, it was like the thing that I opened up first thing. I would read TechCrunch. Yeah. And
so cool
at the time I was I was running recruiting at Netflix and doing HR for our product teams. But often it was like where I learned where to get people from, you know? Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, oh,
because
there's talented people over there. I'm going to talk to them.
at that time, almost every funding round, like if you had $1 million
Yeah.
in funding, it was on TechCrunch because there weren't that many $1 million rounds happening.
No, I know. And look at it now.
Yeah.
And now you raise $20 million and you hope someone notices. Like it's
Right? Yeah.
it's
Like if you raise $1 million, people are like, you must not be
yeah,
very
why?
good.
What
Why
happened?
would
What
you
went
do that?
wrong?
Yeah.
I was thinking for
Go
us, it
ahead.
was a default too. You'd send, when I was at that 2007 timeframe, got into executive recruiting for venture-backed startups. And so, of course, you're always like waiting for the announcement. So then when you're hitting people up for a particular company, it's like, oh, here's the TechCrunch article, right, around the funding that they got from these venture capitalists. So it was definitely the go-to.
Yeah. It was validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you
So
get
then you start
TechCrunch.
Udemy.
Yeah.
So I just read it obsessively for 3 months. I had a government job. I was consulting for the government. I had nothing to do all day. I had to be at the office. And so I literally read TechCrunch for probably 4 hours a day. I read every article in TechCrunch, every article in Crunch Gear, and then in Mobile Crunch. And at one point they had in the same week, they had two different announcements in TechCrunch. One was that this new incubator called the Founder Institute was starting. And the second was that the Mobile Crunch, which less people read because this is pre-iPhone or kind of when the iPhone was just starting, Mobile Crunch had a announcement for internships. And I applied to both and I got into both. And my life, again, completely changed. I joined this incubator. I was living in Washington, D.C., and I was doing it remote, but I'd fly into San Francisco, which is my hometown. Like I grew up in the Bay Area. So I'd fly back home every month to attend this thing, and I'd do it virtually. And was trying to start a company. By the end of the summer, my ideas were all like totally blown. They weren't working. And so the founder, Adeo Resi, who's a brilliant man, also happens to have been college roommates with Elon Musk. So he kind of has multiple ways. He's a 7-time entrepreneur, 8-time super sort of salt of the earth entrepreneur. He just like has done everything, knows everybody. And he pulled me aside and said, Gagan, like your company's sucks. Like and he was a very, very blunt guy, like way more blunt than I am. Like, and he's just like, dude, this is not working. Like you need to go meet other companies. And I didn't really want to do it. And he introduced me to the co-founders of Udemy. And they weren't even sure they wanted to run Udemy. They were working on other ideas. And Adeo had saw their demo of Udemy and Adeo said, you need to work on that project and you need to meet Gagan. And we had Skype calls and we ended up liking each other. They were Turkish immigrants, and I was, I'm a son of an Indian immigrants. So I grew up traveling a lot. I really understood how to relate to people from other cultures. And I think they weren't getting that from a lot of the other people in the Founder Institute.
Yeah.
And so it kind of became my superpower. Was really this really ridiculous thing. I joke is I had an American passport and I spoke great English and I knew how to work with international people. Like that,
Right.
I was like the benefit I provided.
Yeah.
And then I became sort of the business co-founder of Udemy. They made me a co-founder, gave me co-founder equity, and we went and built the business for about 3 years.
Amazing. So, you're kind of a serial entrepreneur yourself because you do Udemy and then you do 2 more. So, I don't know, Pete, how you feel about this, but because we get to work with many founders, and obviously I worked with Reed for many, 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 many years. I have just the utmost appreciation for this journey because, I get to see how challenging it is. I get to see how rewarding it is, but I also get to see how exhausting and mentally and emotionally. So like, what makes you want to keep doing it? Because it is so hard. And I think it's lonely sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I've flirted with the idea of exiting stage left so many different times in my career. In between each company, I didn't have the self-awareness that I was definitely going to start another company. But over time, I think I realized now that I don't think I could see myself doing anything else. And I don't think I would really be that good at anything else. Like I would probably have made more money over my career. Like if you think about the thing that I don't measure myself this way alone, but a lot of entrepreneurs and startup people and investors measure themselves entirely by how much money you made. And if you look at that metric, I would have made more if I had joined companies throughout this time because I was actually very good at picking companies. And I had a few that I think I would have picked correctly and joined and would have done really well. But I wasn't designed to be that way. And I think working in another organization would have been tough for me. So it took a while for me to appreciate that. I thought for the longest time that I would be a good lieutenant, but over time I realized that isn't the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think once you've had a taste of this, it's really hard to have a boss.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's part of it. I think that it's hard to have a boss, but it's also really hard to not have a boss. I think it's just as hard to stay in the role. But you said it's lonely. It is extremely lonely. And it is, I was just reading, a friend of mine posted this post just today. His name's Jason Tan. And he just, it's actually a short post, but you can tell just how much is in it. He's like, I burnt out and almost, killed his own company. And he recognizes this, and he talks about the story pretty often. And I think the reality is like everything rides on you in both good and bad ways. Like you didn't just choose who you work with. You chose every single person at your team. So any failure they have feels like your failure.
Yep.
You also chose what market to go into. You chose what investors. You chose, like you have like 100% ownership over your world, your business world.
Yeah.
It feels like. Now, obviously there are market forces that you could at some point, blame a little bit for challenges or things you didn't foresee. But the truth is like the best entrepreneurs did foresee that in a certain sense. And so really everything is on you, your success and failure. And that is very difficult. And no one else in your organization or even in your life can truly relate to that level of responsibility. So yeah, I do think it's a very tough job, but I also think it's incredibly amazing. Like we are so lucky. Like in 2008, no one thought that this was like, I would go to family parties and people would tell me, when are you going to get an MBA?
Yeah.
Even in 2011 and 2012, when Udemy was like a going concern, or 2015, when it was like doing 100 million of GMV a year or something. I don't know the exact numbers on what timeline, but like, I still got that question.
Right.
And
when are you going to get a real job? Yeah.
Huh?
When are you going to get a real job? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's cute.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure even for you too, you joined these companies like very early, you were startups, like people were probably like, what the hell were you doing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I first got into recruiting, my parents were like, is this a Ponzi scheme? Like, what is that? Like, what, I grew up in Kentucky and like there were not headhunters, they were like, this sounds really weird, honey. But if you want to.
More importantly, someone will pay you for that? Yeah.
Yeah. And then the crazy thing about this whole industry that we all occupy, in startups is you have very little job security, actually. I mean, you can totally, your company can go bust, especially at the early stage. It can have layoffs, like anything could happen. And yet it's kind of like the film industry. Like you don't need your particular movie to be a hit. You just need to be good enough that your reputation allows you to get to the next movie. And like the same thing is true in startups. And it's something that I think people really don't understand. It's like, no, you actually don't need this lifelong job security as long as your industry provides the job security. So your job security is not to a specific company, but tech provides incredible job security. Like if you're good, like you will get your next job.
True.
And that I think, and like for me, I could raise money, for a donut company today. Right. And like that's crazy, but it's kind of true. Like I actually could. And I'm so grateful that I have this job where I get to come up with absolutely insane ideas and pitch people and say, hey, like, will you give me $10 million to go build this thing? And they will. And that's just, we're so lucky that we live in this, like such a positive sum ecosystem. And that's the great thing about this is
it's true.
So the scoop is it's an AI enabled donut company though.
Of course.
Correct?
Yeah,
You're
no
just
doubt.
checking.
Has to be.
It's the idea is that Everybody shows up. There's a prompt engine, and you can type in the type of donut that you imagine today. There's in the back end, there's a donut factory, kind of like Krispy Kreme, but you can't see it because
Be
you
robotic.
wouldn't want anyone to see it. There's a robot that basically can shape the sprinkles or the frosting or whatever to whatever you can imagine, and then it creates a donut, and people will line out the door for these special
Yeah.
customized donuts that you prompt into existence.
No doubt that would work.
Where do we send the term sheets? Is that
I know. Yeah, you'll get one in your inbox later.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll take it seriously.
But so speaking of raising money and the fact that you're good at it, you have spoken openly about failing, but you got to have a great reputation. I think having that great reputation helps you do it the next time. But talk to us about times where it's been hard.
Many times. I mean, first of all, I had a falling out with my co-founders at Udemy, and they sort of showed me the door. So I left there. That was heartbreaking because it was my first company. I'd put my name on it, and I felt like I thought I was going to be there forever, and that didn't last. Then I started another company which raised, I think, $60 million, and we eventually had to shut it down. I basically burnt out myself. The company had a really, really successful 2.5 years and then a really terrible sort of just complete crash over 1.5 years. And so I would say that I still look at my career as more failure than success. But the good news about startups is you get paid for your successes and you don't pay for your failures financially. You
Right.
pay emotionally dearly.
Yes. Yes.
And so, it's all upside. So once you get upside, it's great. And that's probably the saving grace of these things. But yeah, those were tough moments. And even with Maven, we started off really hot, and then we had to really cut the team down and rebuild. And there were many years where we felt like, okay, is this thing going to be a real business? And we finally got to that point, but it took a lot of iteration.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's part of probably why you love it, because it's not a straight line, right? And it's a journey, but it's also the thing that probably causes the most emotional toll and stress and all of those things. What do you and I'm hogging up all the time, so jump in here, Pete, anytime. But what do you do to manage that stress? What have you learned over time that helps you?
Yeah. Outside of work, I've always had a really good sort of system of what I do, and it changes over time with different life phases. But, as I mentioned earlier, I have a great group of friends. I'm very lucky that my group of friends are not all in tech, and therefore we do talk business. I have a few friends who, I just had dinner with them last night, and we do talk about our careers, but there's no status orientation to our friendship. So if I have years where I'm not doing well, I have no question. In fact, I know that my friends will be maybe like me more because there's no I'm less stressed. I'm a more chill. I'm a different person when I'm not running a company. And so the truth is actually my friendships are better. And that means that there is this feeling of psychological safety that your social network is not tied to your perception of success. And that's, to me, the biggest mistake I see founders make in the Valley is that they have private relationships that are status oriented because they themselves become status oriented. And I think this is true, by the way, not just for founders. I think this is probably true in many tech circles. And if you can't get past that, it's okay if you meet someone because, you were both, starting companies at the same time and you become friends, that's fine. But if you cannot get past that level, it's very, very lonely when you fail because you feel like your failure goes beyond just the company and the investors and the employees, which is already a ton of pressure, but it goes into your social life, which feels so daunting and your relationships. So I'd say that's been a really special thing that I've been able to have, and then on top of that, I enjoy myself outside of work. So I definitely, work hard, play hard kind of person. Tomorrow I will do a full day shoot on a video we're going to drop soon. I rarely ever do this, but once every couple of years, you want to do a launch video or something. So we're doing that tomorrow. And then that night I'll fly and go visit my friends in LA for a couple days. And I might have a call or two or do some work over the weekend. It's not like I won't, but as soon as that call's done, at least I get to go and spend time with my friends and enjoy myself and eat good food. And I think we're going to a jazz club. Like, I think stuff like that's just really important to have as,
Yeah.
On top of work.
That sounds a lot more fun than what I'm going to do this weekend.
No, I think that's good advice, though. I would say from a founder perspective, and I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming you get outreach as well from other founders who are going through things, but just, what it sounds like too, and seems to make a lot of sense, is having a group of friends who, even if they are in the same industry, that there's that more than just a superficial relationship of, hey, let me tell you, what you should be doing or how it's going, or, can you find the friends who say, hey, your company sucks, right? And maybe you should think about something else, but not in that context of, it's a contest where I'm competing with my friend. I mean, I see that so much where it feels like, even the CEO founder networking groups often feel more like a contest, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's got to be a hard place to be. Find some friends who can be transparent with you and ask you the questions, and even, to hanging on to the folks you knew from high school who then, can be like, wow, like, is that what you want to be doing? Or with no ill intent, right? Like trying to keep up with them. But anyways, I guess I'm just rambling. But so, like, what advice do you give founders, as they're struggling through this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think on top of finding friends, find routines and things that make you happy. Now I do this with my wife, but even since I was working on Sprig and I had a little bit more, I could afford this basically because at Udemy, we were basically broke the entire time. So, at Udemy, I would travel and stay on my friend's couch, right? So I'd go to LA or something and stay on a friend's couch. So I still had this, but now it's like, I go up to Northern California and enjoy wine country for a night and book a room in a hotel and get a massage and like drink wine and eat great food. And like having a routine of things that sort of provide you with that recharge, I think is really powerful. I'd say the other thing is like, I have always, when I am the most stressed, I have the best habits. So as my stress levels go up, my strictness around my habits goes up as well. And that's been a really, really good behavior, in part because I learned from childhood. I had family members who had the opposite behavior of, like turning to the bottle or something when they are not, when they are stressed. And I learned very quickly that like the one thing you do not want to do when you are stressed is like take it out on your own body or on yourself. And so now, funny enough, like when I'm stressed, eat cleaner, I work out more, I sort of take care of myself. And I think that's also really important. The final thing is to be aware of it, because honestly, like for most of my career and even to this day, I'm not very good at being aware when I'm stressed. Everything I'm telling you is a subconscious thing. I subconsciously like start doing this. And then I notice, oh shit, like right now on this podcast, I'm thinking, yeah, I've been really healthy lately. Like, and luckily my stress right now is really positive stress, but I am doing a lot. I'm pushing hard right now.
Yeah.
And that is clearly related. I'm now literally in this moment, I'm realizing that is the case.
Well, I'm glad we could help you.
Luckily right now I can say that it's like, I'll be honest, like it's quite a lot of exciting things are happening in my life. So the stress is good, but good stress is still like,
it's still stress.
It's still stress.
Yeah. Stress isn't always bad. And I think that's where, we had I'm not remembering her name right now off the top of my head, but we had a woman on the show, who says our association with stress is part of the problem because we associate it with it always being bad and negative. She's like, stress is also good because it pushes you to do better and more. And that's exciting, right? That's good for your body and your brain. And anywho, so stress is not always bad. It can propel you into other things.
I mean, one of the things that I do right now to sort of, maintain some balance is on Friday mornings, I play soccer every Friday. And the great thing about that is I'm a terrible soccer player. I learned as an adult. So, and most of the people I play with have been playing since they were kids. And so I really had to force myself to learn how to be effective on the field. And that's very stressful, actually.
Yeah.
because I'm like embarrassed if I miss a pass or if I miss a shot or whatever. And what's really interesting is often when I feel the positive stress of like, oh, I better make this shot. That's when I make the shot.
Yeah.
And so I do agree with you that there is positive stress that can force you to sort of be at your best.
Yeah.
And then I can also associate it has a shade of negative stress. And when it's negative stress, you know, I'm worried about missing. It's not like, it's like if you're worried about missing the shot, you're more likely to miss it. But if you're worried about making the shot, you're more likely to make it. That's a really interesting sort of dynamic there with
Yeah.
how it relates to work. So I thought I'd share that anecdote.
No, I think that
yeah.
that's so true. Well, I don't
And
know.
you didn't say pickleball. That's what I like. So, you know, you
Yeah,
said
I like
soccer.
pickleball
All right.
too.
I have been playing pickleball recently, but I definitely don't view it as it's hard to get a lot of exercise unless you play singles. I think
That's
doubles
true.
is
That's
just
true.
not it's not enough running for me and soccer's running. Pickleball is super fun though. I love
It
it
is so
for
fun.
yeah, so fun.
Okay, I don't know if you will agree with this, Pete. I think you will because we tend to think alike. But I think that hiring is one of the founders or CEOs' most important jobs. And really focusing around building a great team is crucial and really is a big, difference of whether you do it well or not, right? It's the team that you build. So I don't know, Pete, if you agree with that. And I want to know, Gagan, if you agree with that.
Pete?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, 100%. I would say that every successful company had a founder who could recruit well. I can't say that every successful company, didn't, like, that doesn't mean that it applies to everybody, but for sure you can say that all the ones that weren't successful had a founder that couldn't recruit well. We deal with that obviously a lot in the talent role at a venture capital firm. I think there's a strong desire oftentimes to just like, boy, I wish I could like completely outsource this. And it's like, well, you can't. It's just like you can do a whole lot of things to make that more efficient and effective as a job to make sure that you're solely focused on the close, right? The fit and, those key aspects of it. Like without that sort of overwhelming desire to like hire the best people, I think a company will struggle.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'll also say that the number one most important thing for a founder is to get product market fit.
Yep.
Sure. Well, if you won't need to hire if you don't have that.
Correct. And then I think the second most important job is to hire and manage a great team. I think that's right.
Was that obvious to you from your learnings as a 13-year-old?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just to be, again, like I joke a lot, I talk a lot about the negative, but just to be clear, like we had a great team and there was no way that camp could have succeeded without like incredible like camaraderie amongst the team together. And like I said, we're all friends to this day. So I think even then I knew that the team was super important. And that was kind of the key to the whole thing. Now, how you manage the team and what style that takes is different for different people. Like, you were part of Netflix. My interpretation of Netflix was this is, they explicitly said it's not a family, it's a team. And I definitely have that attitude. So I think there's a trope that's incorrect, which is like the company is a family and we always look after each other no matter what. And like, yes, any person I've ever worked with who has given me their honest best, I'm there for if they ever have a real challenge. At the same time, I'm not going to keep them employed just because they're having a real challenge. And those are two separate things. So I do believe in hiring and recruiting and managing a great team. And I believe that the team is the operative word there.
Yep.
Well, the product market fit thing,
my
though,
language.
actually, absolutely. I think if you don't have that, it's actually hard to recruit in the sense of like, people have to be excited about what you're doing, right? And so for sure, like getting to that point where then you can be that evangelist, that's how you hire great people and actually close them and get them excited about it because you've got something that people want to join. So I think a lot of founders also just underestimate sometimes it feels like they're like, wow. I mean, not all companies today, of course. There's some that become instant household names, but for a lot of other founders, it's like, they're almost surprised sometimes when a really great person is interested. It's just like, wait, you're interested? Like, so just even that, imposter syndrome, I think that runs rampant in founders as well with, they believe they built something amazing and at the same time are surprised that they can hire amazing people, which I think is a mental thing that, like
Yeah.
good founders, you got to get past that.
Did you have that, Gagan, at all? It doesn't strike me that you did.
Yeah, that's a great question. Think that I was, yeah, I don't think I felt like, oh, I cannot believe this person is coming to work with me for a long time. I think nowadays I feel it more. I think as a young founder, I was like, I'm going to go build the biggest thing ever. This is incredible. I was sort of drinking my own Kool-Aid. And I think over time, I think I've come to appreciate just how competitive the job market really is and how good some of the people that I get to work with are. But, I also think that early on, we were not at Udemy recruiting people who were already proven. We
Yeah.
were recruiting people who were figuring things out. Now, some of them have been wildly successful. Like I'm so amazed by many of the early Udemy team members and what they've accomplished. But I didn't really appreciate what I had at times.
Mm-hmm.
And also how much people can grow and change over time. I mean, it's not like the person I hired is the person who they are today. It's just that they had such good trajectories.
Yeah.
And I think we were really good at finding those trajectories. And also, and as long as you don't as long as you admit when you're wrong or, you fix your mistakes, I was very, very good, like very lucky to be like pretty hands off. Like I let people do their thing. And I think that's an example of something that allows those types of people to sort of be really successful. But also, honestly, I don't think I appreciated how good they were until they just like over their careers, they just were all so amazing. It's
Yeah.
really, and now that I've seen that, I have more awareness whenever someone who I think is really talented joins the team. I feel so lucky.
Yeah, I know, but isn't it? I don't know. I love watching people grow. It's so amazing what, when you get those special people and then you see them 5-10 years later and you're like, wow, look at it's just cool. Anyways,
Yeah.
we are running out of time and we have not really talked about Maven at all. So do you want to talk about Maven?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we didn't talk about any of the businesses actually.
I know.
True.
So, yeah, I mean, Maven, I think is actually a pretty relevant fit for your audience, which is that we believe that humans still have a place in modern learning and development. I don't think that we're anywhere close to the point at which AI can sufficiently replace a live expert with niche expertise. And so what Maven has done is recruited some of the best experts in the world, like people who literally run product at OpenAI or are reporting to, C-levels at Anthropic, or who are, building AI at Google, right? You have some of the top talent or who are the first PM lead at Stripe. We recruit them, we incentivize them, and we have them teach the next generation of employees. And so if you're a senior leader who is, a senior manager, let's say at, a Netflix, and I don't know the number, but we certainly have hundreds of people at Netflix who've used Maven. You can go on Maven and you can take a course on everything from executive communication and influence from Wes Kao, who's just a fantastic, leader and co-founder at Maven in that case. Or you can take a product sense course from Shreyas Doshi, or you can take a course on Claude Code from James Gray. And we provide continuing education essentially for anyone who's looking to improve their skills over time, because we believe that in a world that is constantly changing, you kind of need to do something every year or two to keep up with what's going on.
And I mean, I feel like right now, we all recognize that AI is this next, revolution in tech. And for me, it feels much faster than some of the other ones. And, I think if folks are not open to this and getting this, that they're going to just be behind. And I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts? What
I
should
mean,
we all be doing?
the biggest thing that I think people are missing is they think they can solve the problem by just using the tools. Like, just give people access to the tools. They'll just figure it out. It's like most HR leaders have already tried that over the last couple of years, and they know that like that has not
Doesn't
worked.
work.
You
Yeah.
know. And then the other thing is individual contributors think to themselves, well, I'm reading about this stuff on Twitter, or I'm on LinkedIn, or I watch it on YouTube, and that also doesn't work. You know, I think that what you need is, for most people, you need structured learning. Whether that structured learning is self-run, which I think can happen. People can self-create their own learning systems. Or we find it's like super efficient to just go and take a one-day course on Claude Code. Like, you're just, you could hack on Claude Code for 3 weeks or 3 months even, and you can compress all that knowledge into one day. And it's just way more efficient. Someone has curated this for you, and now all of a sudden you're at the next level. And then you still have to spend the next 3 months improving and refining and applying it to your own use case. So the reality is that you can never get rid of the need for practice. The goal of Maven is just to get you to practice faster, get you to the point of knowing what's possible and having a goal and really understanding the underlying systems of what you need to change in order to adopt AI. I think the biggest mistake people make with AI is not recognizing how much of a fundamental change it is. Like, Maven's org structure is different today because of it. We have changed the way that we run pods. Our pods used to be PM, a designer, and 4 or 5 engineers. It's now half a PM, half a designer, and 2 engineers. That's a totally different structure.
Yeah.
And by the way, like, then the designers we're actually asking ourselves if we need more engineers per designer than what we have. That's the same ratio, right? 2 to half is the same as 4 to 1. So these are all things that you have to ask yourself. So we actually have courses for leaders as well. Actually, Claire Vaux is teaching one on EPD, engineering product and design, how you redesign your engineering product design leadership. There's courses on how to become a better super manager, or how to be a people leader using AI powered techniques by people who come from the top tier organizations, rather than, Udemy or Coursera. And I'll differentiate between both of our past companies, Jessica, here, which is like, Udemy, you get a random person on the internet who knows the skill really well, might be a great teacher, but isn't at the cutting edge. And then at Coursera, you get someone who's a professor. And I very much believe that universities are going to be one of the laggards when it comes to AI. So they're not going to be on the cutting edge. So I think that's the big difference that we've created with Udemy, with Maven. And yeah, I think it's pretty exciting.
I would say so. Okay. This is my last question for you. And it's a selfish question because I have a 6-year-old. So, he's going to be in 1st grade in public school here in Texas next year. And they don't know anything about AI. Like, I don't know. Like, what do you think about like education that's happening in our country right now for our children? This is a loaded question, but it's, again, selfish.
Yeah, I mean, I think I believe in the alpha school model.
I just was researching that. I was going to bring it up on the podcast if we had time.
That's the shortest version of this answer, which is for a long time before Alpha School became popular, I visited it 5 years ago, well before anyone really knew about it. And then I had been thinking about this for the last 10 years. I feel like there has been a dramatic degradation in the quality of sort of institutional learning, both at the K through 12 level and at the university level. And I think the gap is much bigger than it used to be. And so I'm increasingly thinking of alternative education sources for my hopeful future children. And I tell my friends when they ask me about this, because I get asked this question. I was a public school kid. I love the idea of public school, but they really are not keeping up. And, that is a serious problem for society, by the way. Like, this is not good. We are exacerbating an education gap that has already been a problem for 30 years. And AI is only going to make it worse, because people like you are going to teach their kids how to use it. You'll figure it out. But the average parent who doesn't know and doesn't use it is not going to, and it's going to create a bigger divide, because it does give you superpowers. Like it's like, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but like I'm amazed by what I can accomplish. Like it's next level.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Like, we're thinking about all sorts of expansion things at Maven, and I don't need a chief of staff to go and do research on it. I don't even really need to talk to experts on it. In the early days, I go and do a bunch of research on AI, then I call the experts, right? And that is a crazy shift. Like, it's a crazy shift for me as a CEO, and I'm not even at the center of the bullseye here. The
Right.
center of the bullseye is a 6-year-old. The center of the bullseye is a designer or an engineer, an IC designer and engineer. They're the ones who are really changing their behavior the most. And so, yeah, I think your kid, I would highly recommend looking into some of these alternative futures and figuring out how to integrate it into your them.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. Well, I'm so sad we're out of time. We always ask for a piece of inspiration or advice for the listeners for you to wrap up. So what do you want to leave us with today? You've already left us with so much, but I'm going to be greedy and ask for one more thing.
I think that if you're just genuinely a curious and sort of learning oriented person, this is one of the most exciting moments in your life. And I actually think this AI doomerism is like totally understating the AI optimism case. And the AI optimism case is we can all do more. We can all, get more stuff done. We'll have more free time. Already today we have more free time than our ancestors did. We forget this, but it's true. And because we forget about household work. And household work has gone down dramatically, even though hours.
I'm raising my hand, not for me.
Yeah, well, trust me, it has actually. I'm
sure it has, but
it doesn't feel like it.
You know what?
Compared to your ancestors, it has.
It's true. Yeah, I'm not having to go to the well and bring in buckets of water. Thank God.
And you don't have to churn butter.
Yeah, I'm not churning butter, but I need help with laundry.
Yeah, well, we're still working on it. By the way, laundry folding robots are coming.
I know. I want one.
Yeah, they're coming. They're real.
Do they put it away? Working. Do they put it in the drawers?
No, you have to take it and put it into the drawers, but they will fold it for you.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, right now it costs like $5,000, so it doesn't really make sense for most people, or $10,000. It's like extremely expensive, but it will get cheaper, and it'll be cheap. It'll become the price of a washer, which I believe is like $1,000 to $2,000 these days. So, yeah, this is going to be crazy, and it's so exciting. And I think it's exciting for your listeners, not just for founders, like not just for CEOs. I think it's exciting for everybody. And my team is jazzed up, and they're all learning like all the time new stuff and sharing it during our weekly demos. And so I personally am super optimistic, and I hope you take that away from this podcast.
Well, I do. I'm grateful for you coming on the show. Thank you, Pete, as well. And thank you, listeners. And I hope you go take some of the courses on Maven, because it's going to change your life. And thank you for you're just a good human. I'm really glad you came on the show, Gagan.
Thank you. Thank you both. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I felt like it was super natural, and obviously I have a ton of respect for what y'all have done. And so it's fun to have a chance to connect.
Yay. Yay. Well, that is it, folks. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for listening to TruthWorks.